everybody and welcome to Flock Talk. Today we're going to be going over how you would transition a bird from eating out of food bowls to eating entirely out of foragers that are scattered throughout their space. Foraging is an excellent enrichment activity and is the primary way that a parrot would naturally access their food. By digging through grasses and cracking open nuts on trees, there are a ton of activities that a parrot would normally do in order to access their food that is far more enriching than just eating straight out of a bowl. Incorporating foraging into their daily routine can be really important for a parrot's mental health. It can help reduce plucking behaviors, decrease mental stress, and keep them occupied and entertained throughout the day. It can also help slow a bird down so they do not overeat or eat their foods too quickly, which could lead to health problems. Now, my birds do entirely eat out of foragers. Since Toto is newer, he still has a backup bowl while he learns, but the end goal is for them to basically not eat out of food bowls at all and entirely search and scavenge their environment for the food instead. So we're going to go over the process that I use in order to teach a bird how to entirely forage for their food with very little risk. The first step in this process is going to be teaching your bird how to forage to begin with. You're not going to want to touch their actual main diet and accidentally risk them not eating as much as they should if they don't know how to forage yet. So what we're going to do is leave their food bowl alone for now, and you're just going to use treats or some other reinforcing food that your bird likes, and you're going to put them in foragers around your bird's cage. I have done an entire video on the step-by-step process on how to teach a bird how to forage before, so I would check that out if your bird does not know how to forage at all. But for the gist of it, you're basically going to take some very simple foragers ranging from a foraging tray with just scattering through toy parts to very visible, easy to grab treats, and you're going to very gradually start to make those challenges a little bit more complicated for them to solve. Eventually, you're going to be able to have your treats completely concealed and hidden and have a bird that is very eagerly exploring their environment, checking everything out, and trying to find food even if it's not directly visible. When it comes to transitioning from just foraging for treats to foraging for food, one of the first things I want to ensure is that my bird is reliably and consistently foraging throughout the day. So if you are setting up treats for your bird to find throughout the day and half of them are still not being eaten, then that's a pretty significant sign that your bird is not ready to transition to searching for their food. You want your bird to be reliably foraging every single day and finding about 95% of everything that you hide without assistance. If your bird is struggling to find all of those foods or they aren't occupying themselves in foraging throughout the day, you may find that you are hiding things too difficultly for your bird, they don't understand that the food is there, or they just don't understand how to solve that particular puzzle. So as a part of the routine, I would set up a bunch of treats in the beginning of the day, and then at the end of the day around dinner, I would go around with your bird and double check all of the foragers that you would set up that day to ensure that they know where the food is and you are helping them find it. This way the bird is starting to understand where the valuable food can be hidden, the different possibilities there are for foragers, and how to access that food when you're not able to assist them. Over time, your bird will begin to get a lot better at foraging and require a lot less of your assistance in order to find the treats. You will find that you can set things up in the morning, and when you go and check in the evening, there might only be 1 or 2 treats that haven't been found, or even none at all. Now that your bird is reliably foraging for treats, we need to start incorporating pellets. But we don't want to take food straight out of their food bowl right away, because this could cause a bird to go hungry, and that can be dangerous for them. So what I'm going to do instead of taking food directly out of their daily dose is I'm going to add a little bit more onto their dose for the day. I'm going to take a couple extra pellets that the bird would not otherwise have had, and I'm going to hide those around. And the point of this is to make sure that the bird is valuing foraging enough to do it even if it's not for high-value fatty seeds and treats. And this is really important because if you were to go ahead and take a portion of your bird's food and hide it just to find out that they don't think that foraging is valuable enough to search for their pellets, then your bird's going to go hungry and they could get sick. If you find that the first time you offer pellets, your bird kind of looks at it and walks away because it's not a high-value, super interesting treat, don't panic and don't be worried. It's not totally uncommon for this to occur. Once the bird is used to searching for really high-value fatty snacks, if they come across something that's less valuable for the first time, they might keep searching in hopes of finding that fattier seed instead. They're going to look for the bits and pieces that they want and pick out the things that they desire most. And in most cases, pellets are not that thing. What I'm going to encourage you to do is decrease the amount of treats you have hidden in place of pellets instead. This way the bird will go searching, they'll find a couple of those high-value treats, and then as they keep looking and there's no more left, their interest will fall more on those lower value seeds and their pellets instead. Additionally, you can make searching for pellets a little bit more interesting than searching for the seeds and the treats instead. And what you can do is you can have it in the foragers that are easier to solve. You can have it in the toys that they prefer the most. You can help and engage with them so that way you are actively creating more excitement for the pellets over the seeds that are hidden. Over time, you should start to see your bird be a bit more eager in searching for the pellets, being a bit more excited, and you're going to start to notice a phenomenon known as contra-freeloading. Contra-freeloading is basically a result of actively searching and foraging for your food. And this happens in people just as much as it does every other animal on the planet, where the food or the resources that you have to work for and you actively put a lot of effort into receiving is more valuable than the stuff that's just handed to you. And as a result of this, a bird that is foraging for their food will become more interested in doing so. They're more enriched by that activity, it's more fulfilling, and they're more motivated to keep digging and searching and foraging over the plain open bowl of freebie pellets that are sitting out. And you'll start to notice that even if your bird has a full bowl of food sitting right in front of them, they will still check all of their foragers first or show a preference for foraging over taking the food that is easily available. And this phenomenon is going to be what makes foraging for their entire meal a lot easier to transition to. So once you've got them foraging for random extra pellets and they're finding about 95% of them without additional support, you can start to use a portion of your bird's actual meal. I would start with about 5 to 10% of whatever they're being fed. That way, if they do happen to get fed in the morning and you're not home till the evening, they won't have missed out on a lot of their meal and they won't be going hungry because that is food that they would normally be eating in the evening anyways. You do not want to take too much food right out the gate because you don't want your bird to end up going hungry for a long period of time, especially if you're trying to do this while you go to work or school where you're not going to be home to be able to help them all throughout the day. So you're very simply going to measure out your bird's food for that day and you're going to take 5 to 10% of their food portion out and hide it in foragers that are very well known to start. You do not want to put this food in the foragers that they already struggle with and tend to need your help with. You want to put these in places that are going to be really easy for them to access so they can be super successful and very motivated to do it going forwards. If you were to put this in difficult foragers right out the gate, you run the risk of your bird not finding the food for that day. You run the risk of them getting really bored and frustrated with the activity and finding a lot of hatred and a lot of resentment for having to forage in the first place. So you want to make sure that you are making this pretty easy and lots of fun and lots of success for your bird. At this point, definitely make sure that you are getting in the habit of helping them at the end of each day. So when you come home from work, do a quick walk around, check all their foragers with them, and make sure that they are finding everything that you hid so you know that they are getting 100% of their daily meal. If you are consistently finding a forager that the bird is not solving, they might need more help learning how to solve that forager. So you can either move to one that's easier, or you can try and figure out what is so complicated about that forager that the bird is struggling to solve. Provided that your bird is able to find 95% of everything that's hidden with little to no assistance from you, you can go ahead and begin to increase the amount that you are hiding each day. I make sure to practice each percentage of food that I'm taking for about a week to 2 weeks, so I know that for 100% certainty, they are consistently able to find that amount of their food in those particular foragers for a long period of time. What can happen is for that first 3 days or so, the bird might be really excited to look for everything and then have that excitement taper out. So you might start with a bird that is able to find absolutely everything and then suddenly start to struggle as they lose interest in the activity. So by practicing this for a solid week or up to 2 weeks at least, you are having a situation now where you are able to monitor your bird and see that over a longer period of time, they are predictably exhibiting this behavior, they are predictably able to find their food, and they are doing so with ease. So every time that you increase the amount of food that you are taking out of their bowls and using in foragers instead, you are making sure that they are finding everything, and you are running that course for about 2 weeks to ensure that they are finding everything and are comfortable and capable of finding that amount of food throughout the day. If you hit a roadblock where you've taken a certain percentage of their food and all of a sudden they're struggling to find it all, you need to kind of evaluate why. So it could either be maybe they're struggling to find things in certain foragers. They might not know that those particular toys are foragers. They might not realize that much of their food is even hidden. There could be stressors happening throughout the day that are impacting their ability to forage, whether that be their stomach shutting down out of fear or stress, or them just not feeling comfortable foraging when you are not around. You could be combating with different reinforcers with the bird thinking that the pellets aren't valuable enough, or you might find that your bird has actually been overeating for a length of time And as a result, now that they're slowly eating and foraging, they're not needing to eat as much food because they're not just binge eating it out of a bowl in front of their face. And that last one tends to happen a lot. And so I do recommend throughout this that you are weighing your bird every single evening to ensure that they're not suddenly losing or gaining weight. That can give you a much more predictable reason for why certain things could be happening throughout this experience. Once you start to hit around 50 to 75% of their food being hidden in foragers, if you start to notice a lot of food being left over, even though they've successfully managed to achieve all of these foragers in the past, you may find it's very simply because they aren't hungry. What can happen a lot is when you feed them out of a plain food bowl, the bird will just sit there and eat and eat and eat, either out of boredom or just because it's there, and so they're just going to keep snacking. But once you switch the food into a bunch of foragers spread out, you slow down how much they're eating. They're having to kind of digest a little bit between each little bundle of pellets that they find, and they're more mentally enriched in their environment and having a lot more fun. They start to not be bored and just eating for the heck of it. And as a result, you can find that your bird actually ends up eating a lot less food than they may have been eating before. So by weighing them every evening, you can reliably check their weight and make sure that they're not losing weight, which would be a telltale sign that they're just not eating enough and something needs to be reevaluated. Once you're hitting the end of this, where you're hiding almost all of the bird's food and they're able to find it all easily without much assistance, you can start to transition to just maintaining that behavior. And so what I try to make sure to do is to do those daily check-ins where at the end of the day, I make sure to go around all of those foragers and ensure that there's nothing that was missed out, so that way your bird is not missing out on their daily meal. And then just doing weekly weigh-ins, so you're double checking and making sure that they're still doing good, they're still being healthy, and they're not missing out on any food that you just forgot about. Some things that can be helpful are to have consistent foragers that you use. Maybe you move the location of the forager each day, but just that way you can mentally remember which foragers have food in them. You might want to write it down and say which ones you put food in this morning, so that way it makes it easier for you to go and check the foragers at the end of the day to make sure that your bird is adequately eating. Anytime that you introduce a new forager, you want to make sure that you are taking it slow, even if it's similar to one that your bird already has. Just don't go putting in a bunch of their food in there and then being surprised if they didn't think to check it for food. For some birds, especially ones that are more advanced foragers and have been foraging for a number of years, they might see a new toy and instantly think of it as a foraging opportunity and go and check it out. But a lot of birds, especially ones that aren't used to foraging, won't really think that way quite yet. So when you give them a new forager and you put their food in it, they might not even check it out. They might be kind of scared of the new toy. So you don't want to put a consistent amount of their food into this toy and then have them completely avoid it for the entire day. So whenever you introduce a new forager, make sure to give them a period of time to get used to that toy. Maybe put some treats in it at first to encourage them to check it out and introduce the idea of foraging with that new object before transitioning to adding their food to it. And then that is effectively it. Now, just because I decide to use 100% of my bird's food for foraging doesn't mean that you have to do it that way, and it doesn't mean that it's ideal for every bird to do it that way, especially if your bird has disabilities or some other health problems that could cause them to have less energy or struggle with mobility for foraging. It might be more beneficial for those birds to have a break and just have the food bowl there, and it by no means that you are a bad person if you do not use 100% of your bird's food for foraging. There absolutely are some risks with it. If you are foraging 100% of the time, you do need to make sure that you are making sure that your bird is eating all of that food. That does mean checking the foragers daily and ensuring that you have a constant rotation of foragers so they can be cleaned out appropriately. Even just foraging for 5% of their food can do wonders for their mental health and enrichment. So if all you want to do is a little bit and the rest of it is feeling a bit overwhelming or a bit scary to try, just do that little bit. It's still a super engaging activity for them. It's still super enriching and is super beneficial for their health overall. So that will do it for me today. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye! Yeah. There you go.